Hello, everyone. I'm Gemma Star, and welcome to another episode of Heart Warriors. This is a series I've been inspired and guided to do thanks to my connection with Katajuda, which is the sacred masculine site in Central Australia. And it is through connection with a journey I made to this site and the people I met there that this series has been asked to be made. I want to understand as a woman the masculine journey into the heart. And I also think that men need to hear from other men what they've done to get from rock bottom to stepping into the best version of who they are today. Today, my guest is a wonderful man called Blase Grinner, and he's from the Sunshine Coast in Australia, the same as me. And it's my greatest pleasure to welcome Blase here today. Hello, Blase Grinner. Welcome to the show.
Gemma, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So I'd like to start with getting to understand the man you are today, and then later on we can jump back into your journey of how you got here.
Awesome. So the man I am today, I'm a man that is a fiance. So I'm getting married in November, the 11th of the 11th.
Congratulations.
So thank you. Super excited for that. Proud father of our three greatest adventures yet. And so I'll name our children because it might give you a little insight into my partner and myself. So our eldest boy, his name's Breath. The middle boy's name's Oak, and our daughter's name's Ocean, 4, 2, and 1. And then my name's Blase. So the elements means a lot to us, and travel and adventure means a lot to our family. And I've dedicated my life to men's work. And so it's been the past 7 years I've really delved into men's work and personal development. And it's been the past 4 years I've been doing it full time, and now have a team of 10 beautiful coaches and souls that we do in the online space. And then with the retreats that we run, there's about 20 facilitators. So that's a bit of a nutshell of like who I am, what I do, what's important to me. And so, yeah.
Oh, awesome. So I'm interested, if you go back to the day you left school, what plans did you have for yourself?
I was going to be the biggest footy star the world ever saw. So it was interesting. I remember, because I've got a very unusual name, and I remember as a young kid going to watching rugby league and getting autographs. I couldn't read any of the autographs when I got home, so I made sure that my name and my signature was audible, like readable for the audible. It was readable for children. I was literally that biggest belief that I was going to be the next NRL star. So I played for New Zealand. I captained New Zealand. I played Queensland many times. I captained every team I've ever played in. And yeah, I was on an NRL scholarship. I had a player manager, and so that was who I was. That's who I thought I was. 17 years old. That's who I thought I was, a footy star. And then life went wayward, and I went wayward, and I stopped playing football, and that was a big trajectory change moment in my life.
Wow. How would you describe the masculine culture in something like rugby league?
So I don't want to say, I hate the word toxic. I hate this buzzword, toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
It was just some very hurt men in the football industry. So I saw my first pornography film at the age of 14 on a tour bus. And so one of the coaches put that on a VHS. And so I watched porn at 14 years old with a group of men and adults. And that was my first introduction. Because I played very high level rugby league at such a young age, I was like 16 hanging around like full grown adults, 30 plus. So I got brought up very fast into sex culture, or that sexual mask that men wear. So it's like the more women you sleep with, the more manly you are. And so at a very young age, I thought that's what it meant to be a man. And so I was sharing my sexual conquest because I was getting validated. And so as soon as we got on a tour bus, hey, Blase, come up the back. And so I was like welcomed into the brotherhood, and they just wanted to relive their childhood or their teens through me. And so there was a culture that was a lot of hurt men. There was a lot of men that were wayward, a lot of men that were cheating on their wives and not living how I would like now. I don't feel is morally correct or right or a virtuous life. The other aspect of it was that what I found is the more aggressive I was, the more I was praised on the football field. And so the more macho, the bravado, like hard hitting and just like playing with broken bones, and the more blood, the more like that very, very tyrant macho bravado was then honored and celebrated. And so I created a very interesting conditioning at a very young age of what I believed it meant to be a man. And then as a father of three right now and in a committed relationship, that warrior energy like that, it doesn't work well in a committed relationship or raising children.
So I'm interested now to go a step further back into, did you have, before you entered this, what you would say is a particular strand of masculinity to go into the rugby league? What about your father and your male role models? Were they in that same line of masculinity?
Yeah, my dad was very hurt. And so my dad was very violent. And so I saw physical violence. So I saw him beat mum, beat me. I'm the eldest of five, and rule the iron fist. Dad was an alcoholic, very addicted to alcohol, and he was also a loner. And so I didn't actually have my first conscious conversation with dad till I was 32. I'm now 38. And I got to ask him about everything, and faced up with everything, really claimed back my manhood and my power. And dad was very beautiful. He opened up, and he's like, whatever you want to know, you ask me and I'll let you know. He wasn't forthright with the information, but I had to ask. So I was just lucky that I came prepared and had a lot of questions asked about his childhood and if he had mates, and being a father. Like I was just like, you had 4 kids. Like, how did you comprehend that? Like, I'm struggling now with 3, and I'm in touch with all emotions and feelings. Like, did you have people to talk to? And he declares, like, no, mate, no one. I go to the pub and I booze up and I was all that kind of stuff. So, and then I just saw that dad was very explosive as well. And so not just with mum, but there was remember the very first act of violence I can remember was I was 4. We just moved over from New Zealand, and a girl had walked past our front lawn, and her dog had shit on our front lawn, and dad gave her a spray. And then her dad came back to our property that night, and I was like 4 years old in bed, and I just remember it was commotion. I got out of my bedroom and I saw this man that I didn't know in the hallway on the front door. Then next thing, him and dad are just punching on, and I was like 4, and it was just like heavy, like violent, and it was like I just remember the thuds. And so, like, I was 4. And so, oh, yeah, that's what men do. Like, they just punch it out. They just use these things to sort things out. So that's why I went very wayward with my football career, because I was using these, and I ended up having a 3-year suspended jail sentence at the age of 18. And so, yeah, it was those role models. And then dad left when I was 7 as well. So him and mum split when I was 7. And he didn't really come back into my life until I was 12. There was a little bit of stuff along the way. Like the boys would get he lived in a pub, a 1-bedroom thing, a bedroom at the pub. And so the boys go one weekend, the girls go the other. And so it was a really interesting upbringing. So that at the age of 7, I was always looking for fatherhood figures or eldership figures. So then when I was always attracted to my footy coaches. Like, I'd become like that eldership or fatherhood figure. I was just really attracted to those men. And then at the age of 16, I started, because I was good at footy, I started knocking around with people that are outside of school. And so I got hooked up with a lot of men, young men. So they're in the early 20s, but they were dealing drugs and that limelight, and that, for a better word, it was like the mafia. Like, I remember hanging out with these dudes. They come pick me up out of school early one day. We went to the pub, and I'm underage, sitting down, drinking. And I remember the dude that walked in, he's like, whatever you hear in here, it stays in here. Don't talk about it. And I was just like, I see this shit in movies. And the conversation these men are having, just like, holy shit, that these dudes could be going to jail. But it felt really secretive, and I felt really cool. I felt accepted, and I felt like I belonged. And then that was that stoicism of just shut up, be seen, not heard, and just you be part of the crew sort of thing. So yeah, it was a looking back, it was a very colorful existence, and a really I don't ever regret anything, because everything that's happened to me throughout my life has made me very relatable to every single man I come in contact with, because of the colorful upbringing I had. So yeah.
Well, I'm interested to know, I'm the mother of two boys. They're older now, 20 and almost 23. But what's going on in a young boy's mind when you're presented with this direction of masculinity, and what happens when you try and steer away from that? If you wanted to discover your maybe softer side or more vulnerable emotions, was that frowned upon, or were you allowed to explore it, or was it a total no zone?
So I never, like, I remember like having coaches pull me aside and say to me, "Hey man, what's going on? Like, you're not yourself." And then I was at the pub and I'd be like crying in their shoulders, but they didn't really have the emotional intelligence to hold me, but they just knew something was up. So it wasn't frowned upon in that way. And it wasn't until I actually went into construction, as in like in the early 20s, that the I suck it up, princess, all of that sort of derogatory stuff started. It didn't really happen when I was a young, like in that. I didn't get told to suck it up or anything like that from other men. I remember there was a few things that used to get said to me, like "Stop your crying," and this is mum, "Stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about." So that was suppression of emotions, like, and so it wasn't just from fatherhood figures, but then, and this isn't. Also, I just want to mention that this isn't blaming anyone and pointing the finger, because we don't know what we don't know, and it's so the this, like, I just, yeah, there was that through line of like to be hard and to be stoic and hard, and then and I just remember when I had my spiritual awakening at 27, the mates I was surrounding myself with, that I hid that. And so I was actually studying Buddhism, and I hid that, and I didn't know how to talk openly about that. But also, I hadn't been taught emotional intelligence. I hadn't been taught about what my values were as a young man, and so there were so many tools that I didn't have that I have access that is accessible to me now. So yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, I want to explore about your spiritual awakening, but I also want to get to your lowest point. Now, was that before your spiritual awakening?
Yeah, 100%. So the age of 22. So this gentleman doesn't like me to use his name unless it's in a face-to-face context. He attempted suicide, slit both his wrists, got 26 stitches, and I was 22. He was 18. And it was really rocked me. He survived. It was like they said 60 seconds away from bleeding out. He was that close to dying, and it really rocked me because he also blamed me that he didn't feel he could talk to me, and that really rocked me. So as a 22-year-old young man that had moved out of home when he was 16, didn't know how to be with his emotions. I did what everyone that I knew had to numb pain, which is drugs, alcohol, pornography, prostitution, steroid abuse, anything, short-term fix, anything, cycle through relationships, just to try and numb and avoid that, because I just didn't know how to be with that pain. So that was those years from 22 to 27 were my lowest. That I just didn't know how to be with life. I was very, very lost.
So what's going through your head when you're going through all this?
Surviving, just literally surviving, get to the end of the week, get the money, get the pay packet so I could just numb out the weekends. It was just literally.
Okay, so I want to sort of dig deep here, because I want any men who are at that point to be able to relate to what you're saying about this lowest point. And if there is a single point that you can remember that actually you said that's enough and you started taking steps to get out of that lowest point. You've sort of given me a 5-year period.
Yeah.
Can we condense it to a single lowest point?
So it wasn't in that 5-year period when it was that aha moment that I said enough is enough. It was I was about 28, So I was a foreman on a construction site. I was leading a lot of men underneath me. And I just remember I was super insecure and super jealous because of all the things I'd done in my past. I was a very insecure man. And my fiance was kayaking with one of her male friends. And I was just super insecure, started creating all these stories that she was cheating on me. And they had a relationship in the past. So I just created this massive event within my mind that it wasn't real. And then I just remember I'd done a massive week, and it was like 60-hour week. I was on my way home, and I was coming through the tunnels in Brisbane, and I was just bawling my eyes out, and I was just green with envy, and I was like punching the steering wheel. I was like, life, this can't be it. I was just punching this. I was like, it's got to be fucking more of this existence than fucking this. Like, fuck. And I was just yelling and screaming at the top of my lungs. And that was that point of like, enough's enough. Like, I fucking can't do this anymore. I don't want to be like working 12-hour days. And then I was driving 2.5 hours one way, 2.5 hours one way to get back. It was like, I was just fried. And that was the point of like, something needs to change. Like, something needs to change. And I'd never talked to anyone. So I through all of this, everything, I still hadn't spoken to a psychologist. I hadn't spoken to anyone up until I was like 28, the spiritual awakening. And so it was that moment of like, enough's enough. Like, and I just remember saying to myself, like, something has to change. I don't want this life anymore. And so that's when I started searching.
So you did mention in a post yesterday that you had been suicidal, you had been addicted, you had been financially broke. Was this all going on during this period?
It's really interesting. So the financial broke. When I met my fiance 7 years ago, I bought $60,000 worth of debt into the relationship. So it's that far in the hole. There's many different reasons for it. And then I started learning about money. And then it was like I had credit cards and bank loans and everything. So spread thin everywhere. And so with like, I'm just like, well, I want a family. Like, this is the most important thing to me, is have a family. I'm going to clear this and just move forward. Excuse me. So I actually enrolled with a company called Capital Debt Solution. And so they consolidated all of my debt. And I remember with she was my fiance at the time, but I remember saying, hey, is this going to go against my credit rating if we ever want to buy a house or anything like that? Like, no. It did. It literally put a black mark against my name, and it literally was bankruptcy. And so it's called a Part 9 agreement. They didn't tell me that. And so we went to, it was about 9 months ago. We've designed our own, maybe longer, maybe 12 months ago, we were about to demolish our house, put our family home, and everything was all there. Went through the banks, and then the banks like, oh, you got to come up with another 30 grand. And we're like, cash? I'm like, okay, cool. So we borrowed that and we bought it and ticked all the boxes. But then they declined it because of this Part 9 agreement that I declared bankruptcy. I didn't know it was bankruptcy 7 years ago. Now, it's super amazing that it didn't work out, and luckily it didn't because of COVID and the prices, and they just kept putting like money on top of the quote. But it's the 3rd of August today. On the 29th of July this year, it all got lifted. All of that got lifted because it was usually a 5-year black mark against your name. But because I paid it off so fast, it was 2 years after you pay all that money off. So I paid that off, that 60K over it was 2 years ago on the 29th of July. So literally 4 days ago, it all lifted. So now I can borrow, I can do whatever I want, and my credit rating is back to where it was. And so it was, really interesting that money, it was, I lent someone very dear to me a lot of money, and I was maxing out credit cards and just helping that person dig them out of the hole. But that person was also addicted to gambling that I didn't know. So there was all this people pleasing and just all of this stuff that I was doing for other people. And I was just literally giving my power away everywhere. And then that was my biggest lesson. It's like, okay, cool. I've got to claim back my power and say no. And I can't do this anymore. Yeah. And I want to have a family. I want to do something for myself. And so, it was a long hole to get out of. And I literally only just finished.
Wow. Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
I do want to go back to that point where we were, that your lowest point, because I want to understand how you got yourself out of that. So what, I don't know if that's the point you were suicidal at. Can you
No,
tell
that
us
was
now, you were driving along the road in Brizzy and, you were frustrated, you knew something had to change. What did you do to change it?
saw my very first ever psychologist. And so his name was Dr. Paul McCormack. He's a beautiful man. And yeah, I ended up, I remember seeing the first time I saw him, he's like, man, we need to catch up every week. And I'm like, yes. And so that was really beautiful. So I think I saw him for every week for like 3 or 4 months, just to unload everything, unpack everything I just spoke to you about. And then we started going to 2 weeks and then a month. And then it got, after maybe like 8 months, he's like, I don't think we need to, there's not much I can do with you anymore. And I felt really good and wholesome within myself. And within that period, I started doing personal development workshops. And so my partner actually gifted me. So within all of this, so I'm starting to see a psychologist. I relapsed and went and smoked ice, and this was this was the big low point. And so it was let's see, actually I think this, so that banging the car and everything, that was the catalyst. It was, sorry, so that it's something's got to change. I remember coming back to, and my partner and I had been dating back then a couple of months, and we had a massive big argument. So I turned around and drove back to Brisbane and then blew myself out on ice. And I went and caught up with all my old mates that I used to do all that stuff with, blew myself out, and then tried to drive home on, this was a Friday, tried to drive home on a Saturday, early hours in the morning, completely off my head. I'd been in hospital. My mate had pushed me over, cracked my skull open. Police were looking for me because I admitted myself out. There was this massive big event. It went over 48 hours. And then my girlfriend at the time, and her mum come and pick me up. And that was the moment. I was like, something's got to change. And that's when I reached out to the psychologist, Dr. Paul McCormack, and then we got to work. And so my partner, I started seeing the psychologist, but she'd also bought me this personal development workshop. And so because of all of the relapse sort of stuff, I was now not with her. I was living on a mate's couch and seeing the psychologist. And I remember him saying, there's workshops coming up. I'm like, and I was very arrogant. I'm not going to that fucking thing. She's just going to try and fucking change me. And he's like, looking at what's the worst thing that could do. And this phrase was the thing that changed my life. He's like, what if you looked at it with like, what's the best thing that you do? I was like, well, maybe I could be confident with myself. Maybe I could let go of this jealousy thing that's got me. Maybe I could find out who I am. And I started like putting it out to the universe, all these things that I could do. And then, the workshop I went to do was by the gentleman name of Preston Smiles and Alexi Panos, and it ripped me apart in the most beautiful way. And then it was only probably 3 months after that, doing that workshop, I left construction.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. There's so many bits and pieces that hopefully I can bring all in and tie up by the ends. But I don't want to forget the jealousy one, because that is something that a lot of people deal with. And having been on the other side of that, it's really tough. So I want to understand what's going through, a man's mind when you're experiencing this jealousy, and what have you done now to get yourself out of that hole?
Yeah, so that monster, everyone knows, every man listening, that Hulk, that green with envy, is like this beast. And so the hardest pill for me to swallow was to realize that no one was doing anything. It was all my stuff. And why I was so jealous is because I was so insecure as a man. And why I was so insecure is because I was beating myself up here with all of the things that I'd done wrong morally in my past. Cheating, stealing, going against my own values, and doing all of that stuff, all of this stuff that at the time was these short-term fixes. Because of all of that, I didn't love myself. I was like, literally didn't love myself. But then because I didn't love myself, I blamed the whole external world, any partner I had, everyone else, rather than actually taking ownership of that. And so how I got through that was, first I had to take ownership and responsibility of myself. And that was like reach out for help and support. So I started seeing a psychologist, started talking about all of these things. Then through men's work and workshops, started to face off with all these things that I felt shame and guilt around, which was like literally, that's been some of the hardest work of my life, to stand in an emotion that we've been taught is negative. But a thing like shame and guilt is just a beautiful emotion. It can show us a lot of things, but like face off with my demons and be held in those experiences. And so being able to forgive myself. And Oscar Wilde said it the best: falling in love with oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. And so that's what I had to do. And so I had to stop saying yes to everyone because I was a big people pleaser. I had to learn how to say no. That was the hardest thing because I was getting like, if I say no, she's going to leave me. If I say no to mum, it's this. If I say no to my brother, it's this. If I say no to my boss, it's this. But
Okay, so tell us, how did you do that? How did you decide? What was it that within you that decided who you were going to say yes to and who you would now have to say no to?
Yeah, so firstly looked into my values. So the two cornerstones to manhood, I believe that we need our values and our vision. When we have those two cornerstones, we can build a life of meaning and purpose as a man. And so first off, knowing my values, because everyone has a set of values that's uniquely to each individual. And so everyone's values some people may be similar, but they're always different. An example of that, my fiance has a value of trust. So one of her core values is trust. I have a core value of trust. What trust means to me is completely different than what it means to her. And so there's a lot of these unconscious agreements that get brought into relationships. And when we don't consciously know our values, we're still judging and perceiving the world and experiences from that place. And I didn't know what I didn't know. So I thought that everyone had the same values as me, so that everyone should treat me the same way.
Sorry to interrupt, but what is trust to you as a man? Because I want to understand from a woman.
Well, okay, so for me, trust for me means trusting the divine path that I've been chosen to walk. So that's what trust means to me. But then there's a different, and so then trust with Melinda, that word for her, what trust means for me is integrity. So integrity is about me being my word, following through and saying what I want to do. Within my value of integrity, I had priority orders. And so it used to be Melinda, my children, and then men's work. And I went through a process, and it was a really big thing around people pleasing. And there was an ultimatum that I was going to lose my family over it. I wanted to go down a plant medicine journey and explore spirituality that way. It was completely against my fiance's belief systems and value systems, because she's never smoked a joint, never had a puff of cigarette, hardly drinks, never done any ecstasy or anything like that, man. And so for me to go do that, because she's seen me relapse on ice 7 years ago. She's seen me at my darkest hours, brought up a lot of stuff. And she said, if I go do that, it's over. I was like, man, we've got 2 boys at the moment. And so I sat with, and I'd been in the work now for a little while, like 5 years. I've been working on myself. And I was like, I know that if I don't go do this and follow my heart, I'm going to resent her for the rest of my life. But then if I lose my family over plant medicine, what are these boys going to do? How is this going? And so I had to sit for 2 days in meditation, but I came back to my values. And so my number one value is love, which is, another word could be God or consciousness. So my connection to love. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is integrity. And then my number 3 is trust. And so when I started exploring the integrity, and I just mentioned before, I had that priority order. It was Melinda, the boys, and men's work. I hadn't chosen myself or my health. And so it was my first, like, oh my God, I've got to be choosing me. And this is how I stopped people pleasing, because I was doing everything for everyone else, had to choose me. So in this moment, I'm like, cool. So I need to choose me, and my health and spirituality is very important to me. So, okay, cool. I have a reference point. Cool. Now, then I went down the next rabbit hole. If we break up and the boys ask me, why did you and mum split up? I was like, okay, I'll go ahead. There's this sovereign within myself that dad stuck true to his values and followed his spiritual path, which I was happy to declare to anyone, even my children. And I was happy to go through that portal. Then this was the most challenging one. Is, okay, so if my number one value is love, and that if I trust in love, and love is the answer, always will be, always was, always will be, can I trust that love will always find a way? And that was the biggest question. I was like, okay, so this is where I really get to face off my values. If I really believe in love and this is who I say I am, I need to let go of this love right now. And I need to let it go and follow my heart and my spiritual path. And if we're supposed to be together, love will find a way. So I did.
Okay, so the spiritual awakening now, can we go through that?
Oh,
What
yeah.
happened?
Oh, it was
And
crazy.
how long is this after? Put it into on the timeline between you'd seen the psychologist and how
Yes.
far
So
ahead are we?
it was just before seeing my psychologist.
Oh,
Yes. And so I was 27 when it happened. And so the frame up to it is the week before I went to this massive big festival, a music festival, took some acid, had an amazing time. And so I had all these people around and had very voluptuous women around everywhere and like a lot of skin everywhere. And so it was like, I thought I was the man. Like, this is the epitome. Look at this, the limelight. So and it was this never ending pit. So I just wanted to relive that and be the man again. So I got, okay, let's go again. Let's have that same feeling I had at that festival, and we'll do it again next weekend. So we got everyone at my house. Got some decks, got some DJs. I'm like, oh, this acid was amazing. I'm going to have 2 this time. And then I had 2 tabs of acid, had 2 pills, and then snorted a pill in front of everyone. This being this big hero. Went to this nightclub in Brisbane, which we had VIP access, get upstairs, but everyone there like, yes, I'm the king. And then it all kicked in. And what it did was lift the veil of reality. And I was able to see entities and darkness and everything that's attached to people. And I lasted in that trip for about 3 hours. Not 3 hours, 3 days. So within that, I started freaking out because I could see these like vampire looking things attached to certain people. So I went outside for some air, and I just remember there was this homeless dude sitting there, and I got called just to talk to him. So I sat down, and it was the most dropped in conscious conversation, awakening, enlightening conversation I've ever had. Then the maitre d' told me to get up and leave. And I'm like, I'm sitting here, I can sit here. But because he was a bum, she didn't want the bum of society to be in front of this glamorous nightclub. And she's really rude to him. Like, I dropped my wallet. I remember dropping my wallet and I had like hundreds of dollars in there and it was all everywhere. And he passed it back to me. Like, bro, put this in your pocket. Someone's going to steal it. It was just a beautiful, like, I studying Buddhism. They say that Buddha just turns up and like, he was God, man. It was just beautiful. And in that moment, I got pretty aggressive with, like, not her, but it's just like, I'm not going anywhere. So she called police. And by the time the police came, I realized that I was God. That was the trip I was going through. I'm God. I've created everything. So I was going like that to a fire hydrant and it would go red, purple, green, blue. It was just like, oh my God, cool. I'm going to start testing things. So this is in the middle of the Brisbane Valley and there's all these cars. So I went like that and all the cars slowed down. And I walked out into the middle of the road. Everything was sparkling. I looked around, came back and went like that. And it sped up again. I was just like, holy, I've like gone in between space and time. I am God. And I believed it. I 100% believed that I was God. And then all these entities were trying to get me. And so then a lot of police turned up. There was like 4 police officers and I bashed all of them. And then they got reinforcements. So it took 9 police officers to put me in a station wagon, paddy wagon. Got into the Brisbane jail, and we were really heavy with each other. We roughed each other up, and because I just had superhuman strength, they put me in a padded cell. And so when they put that me into the padded cell, they really fed it to me. And like, so there was no cameras in there, and they just really, really violent. So I started going into a psychosis in that room. And so I could hear people coming down off ice and heroin and everything. And there was this screaming. And then I'd created a story in my mind that it was my sister getting raped and killed. There was my mum getting raped and killed. There was my brother and so I started like losing all my family members, these people that were close to me. And at the time, it was when ISIS was really big. This is like 11 years ago. So people get decapitated. So I thought this is what was going to happen to me. I literally believed and that I was going to get decapitated. But I remember when they put me into the cell, they took my jewelry off and they had one man had his foot on my head against the ground. So I went back into that moment And I just thought to myself, I'm about to die. He's about to chop my head off. And so I'm like, I've had a good life. And I just remember going, oh man, I let go. It's all good. And in that moment, I woke up. I was like, whoa. And I'm in this space, and there's like, memory was just super vast. There was like hundreds of people there, like hundreds and thousands of people there that I knew. And everyone was so vivid and so clear that no one had legs. I remember that there was just torsos, and I just kept cruising around, and like everyone's like, "Hey man, how are you?" And I was at this big party. And I was saying hello to everyone, and then I'm not sure how long that lasted, but then I snapped back out of that dream state, and here I am in the middle of a padded cell, sitting in the full lotus. Never meditated a day in my life, but I'd sat there and I'd meditated full of all this stuff, and I was just like, what the fuck was that? Because it was so real. I had a direct experience of a different reality. And so that was the awakening, was that experience. Then there was like, for the next 2 days, I finally got out of that cell, and it went on for a little while, the couple of days. And I actually drove a car because I believed I was God. And this is something that's funny actually for your listeners. I believed I was God. And so back in the party days, in this limelight day, I always said, if I was the Prime Minister of Australia, the very first thing I'd do was take that seal off the Powerade bottle, because every time I'm hungover, I'm sick of that. I just take it off. And that was this joke we always had. So I'm like, oh, if I'm God, that means that the Powerade bottle, that thing has happened, that's taken off. So I went in, it was at Gatton BP station, got the thing, and it was still there. I was like, maybe I'm not God. 2 weeks later, Coca-Cola took that out. Crazy. Like, I just,
Wow.
yeah, so that was a bit of a thing. But I remember all I wanted to do was get back to Toowoomba, where my mum was. And I was doing like 120 kilometers on the highway, having these thoughts of like, I'm just going to walk the plane like Jesus did. I just want to walk and talk to people. So I literally took my ute off the highway and just drove it. And I was going to try and drive up these like hills, which were like in the horizon. No, it's like pull my, like, what am I doing? And I'd just driven through 120 kilometers through paddocks, and how I didn't hit a fence or a tree, or like how I'd survived that was just miraculous. So yeah, anyway, that was like on a Friday. So on the Monday, went to work and was running my teams, and I declared openly that I was going through a lot and what I'd gone through. And I glimpsed this thing of enlightenment, because there's all these people at work I didn't like, but I was able to just deliver all these, everything was coming out of my mouth. I was watching these words come out. I was just like, where is this coming from? And why did I feel this certain way? And the only people I knew that meditated or that were enlightened were Buddhists. So I literally just got on Amazon, just bought so many Buddhist books and just Dharma. And so I'd go to work, go home, and just read and read and read. And I'd stay up all night till 3 a.m. and read, have a couple of hours sleep, go back to work. And that was just my life for a couple of months. I just isolated myself and did that, just of searching for this enlightenment thing of what was that thing that I experienced in that padded cell. Then I found a Buddhist temple in Brisbane. So I started going there every Sunday for months, and just talking to monks and learning about meditation and silent meditation, walk meditation, and just started like, it was awesome because they actually would debate with me about stuff, so I could have discussions. It wasn't my way or the highway, because I went to a Catholic school, and when I was asking a lot of questions within the Catholic Church and stuff, I just got told just to shut up. In construction, the same thing was happening. I questioned the status quo, I got told to shut up. This is the first time I could sit and just have hour-long conversations about some stuff that was really interesting to me without being wronged as well. But I hid that from the world. So I was just, the only people that knew I was doing that were the monks and the people that were there as well. And so that was for months on end. So yeah, that was the spiritual awakening. But then I was doing all of that, and then still jealousy, insecure. I hadn't found men's work there. I was just reading. So I had no accountability. I was just trying to self-teach myself and navigate life. And that's when I relapsed and did the ice thing. And yeah.
What I found, I mean, I got into a little bit of Buddhism when I was going through reading lots of stuff in my early 20s. But what I found is that it's great, to do all the reading. I would say that's about 10% of the journey, but the actual living it and the embodiment, because you, as you said, you were reading this and you could grasp it intellectually, but to actually live it and incorporate it in your life is, I'd say, about 90%. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. I think that's I see a lot of people get addicted to personal development. So there's like personal development junkies just doing the next workshop and the next retreat and the next workshop and next thing, but they're not actually implementing what they're learning. And so, yeah, it's another thing that people can use as an avoiding mechanism. But yeah, that literally, it's why I've been in a men's team for the past 6 years. There's been 3 weeks in the past 6 years that I haven't been involved in a men's team. And so it's been, I just, to have accountability in my life by other men has been like crucial to my existence.
Can you explain to us what a men's team is?
Yeah, so whether it's a free men's circle or a men's group, whether I'm leading it or whether it's someone else leading it, whether I'm paying thousands of dollars or $10, I'm always involved within a men's team. So a men's team or a men's circle or a men's group is a place where there's no females. So personal development, as you go work on yourself, but there's both genders there. Men's work is men only. And there's something that happens when there's only men, something very special happens. There's that material, that sexual mask I spoke of at the start of this podcast, that then gets taken away. Because we're not trying to pretend to be someone that we're not. Because a lot of men, we sell out on ourselves to try and impress and court a woman, and we'll sacrifice who we are, thinking that this is who she wants us to be. So we try and morph into someone that we're not. And so when that gets taken away, men are more, it's a lot easier for men to really bear all of what's really going on for them. It was confronting the first time I went, because I was like a little bit insecure within myself as well. And like, yes, I'd been studying Buddhism and stuff, but to be surrounded by men, as just like, there's a little bit intimidating, because I felt like I was an apprentice again. I didn't know where I fitted. But within the first hour, I just realized that just by men sharing openly their heart and their challenges and their stories, that every single one of us is going through the same shit. Every single man there. Didn't matter the age, didn't matter the gender, sexual orientation. It just didn't matter. It's just every man's carrying something. And it's not just men, it's now women as well. But it was this, and I know there's that Me Too movement, but that was this, I'm not separate, but I just remember like in that men's circle, was like, every single person that shares, like, me too. I feel like that. I've been like that. I just kept feeling like, and so we're just mirrors of each other. And then so the why I think men's work is so important is because I believe that men, we have lost trust in men. So men have lost trust in each other because of greed and climbing over each other and all this kind of stuff. And so men have lost trust in men, and women have lost trust in the masculine. And so if we don't trust each other as men, like, how can we even trust ourselves? So that's where I feel men work is so important, because men start to regain trust within the brotherhood or with other men, that they can be safe, that they can express their dreams, their hopes, their tragedies, their triumphs, their everything, and not be judged, just be seen. And then from that trust, then it forms like, oh man, I belong here. And then when a man feels like he belongs from that place, then he can really go in and face off with these demons, because he's got a solid trust within these brotherhoods that, okay, cool, now I'll go face off with my shit. So I think that's been why men's work's so been prevalent in my life, is so I can continually and consistently grow. And there's so many different areas of life and manhood, and especially running my own business, being the father of 3, being in a committed relationship, trying to do things for humanity, trying to have a spiritual game, trying to like still surf and all this stuff. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know what I don't know. And that was the biggest thing. It's like, I just want to learn and be surrounded by people that get to challenge me. Because I just know that, especially here in Australia, that if you start to rise, that tall poppy syndrome, the herd will try and pull you back down. And so that's why I tried to hide the Buddhism and studying and doing all that kind of stuff. Whereas my philosophy now is, I don't want to be the most craziest one in my circle. I want to surround myself with the crazy people that are thinking big about entrepreneurship and fatherhood and speaking openly about doing relationship courses and how we can help each other. And so like then it's like the people I'm surrounding myself with are continually hold me to account to be a better version of myself every single day. And so some of those conversations are super challenging, super like confronting, but they're the kind of conversations I want to have. Like that excites me. That's what gets me out of bed. There's men in my life that every time they open their mouth, I get nervous because they're so blunt. They're so like, and blunt in such a loving way that there's nowhere to hide. And I love that. And so, yeah, that's why men's work is so important to me.
Wow, Blase, every time you talk, I've got like 10 questions coming up and it's like, wow. But one question I wanted to ask, because there's a lot of talk about this in sort of the polarity community and everything. I want to ask you what you say about masculine vulnerability. What does that mean to you? What's your definition, interpretation, feeling around that?
So there's a couple. So I love analogies, and I think men, we really grasp a lot of stuff when we can paint a picture in our head. So men, we have built walls up in front of ourselves, and we have put all this armor on, and that armor and those walls are to protect our heart. So all the breakups and the pain that we've endured, we've created these emotional barriers within ourselves, which we can conceptualize. Like we know, we can feel those bricks, man. You know them, and that armor that feels heavy, and we use it to protect ourselves. And so that armor is like we shut down our emotions. We don't talk about our emotions. We would rather than burdening someone with what we're going through, we don't divulge what's going on. Now, I believe there needs to be a distinction between vulnerability and transparency. I bought into this big thing about, and especially there's this big buzz thing happening like maybe 5-6 years ago. Oh, men being vulnerable, sexy. And it may be still going around now. And so I bought into that. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm just going to unload all of my vulnerability on my partner, not her role. And so all of my stresses with money and finances, all this kind of stuff. So I was being very vulnerable, but it's not the feminine role to hold me in that. That's where men's teams is. And I remember learning that big lesson. I remember leaving construction, jumping, my business failed, and I was just feeling all this pressure. My partner was pregnant for the first time. It's like, fuck, how do I have this conversation around where rent's coming from to a pregnant woman? I know that she needs to feel safe. And I didn't have any men. I did have an online space, but it's literally why I started creating a face-to-face thing here on the Sunshine Coast, because I wanted to talk about all of that. I remember going to my men's team and they're like, yeah, man, it's okay to feel. It's okay to feel what you feel, because it is scary. Now, if you go dump that on your partner, it's not her role, man. So let's come up with some strategy and solutions, and then go talk about you being scared, but you don't need her to hold you, and you can voice openly what's going on. So that is transparency rather than vulnerability. Another example of this is, and this is very recent, I literally only spoke about this on a group call today. 2 months ago, not even 2 months, maybe 6 weeks ago, our 1-year-old daughter had a seizure. It was at 10 o'clock at night. And so in my office here, and Melinda's like, babe, ocean. And she was like fully floppy. And then I could see Minnie was just like in it. And so then she's like, she's not breathing. And so I took her into my arms, and she had a seizure in my arms. I was freaking the fuck out. I thought my baby girl was about to die in my arms. But as a man, I had my fiance really in it. I had my child I thought was going to die. And I had to find this place within myself to lead. And so got the ambulance on the phone. I was able to calmly talk it to the ambulance and Melinda and pack bags and be with my baby girl and get everything sorted. And then they went to the ambulance, sorted everything out, phone calls all night, sleepless night. The next morning, super like erratic as a man. I couldn't hold that space. I could feel my energy wasn't, I was trying to rush everything, get the kids out the door for kindy, the 2 boys. And one of my very first mentors, we have a 2-week call every 2 weeks. We check in with each other. He runs a big men's mover in the States. And it was that day that our call was booked. And I just sent him a message, and I just want to offer this, is that to declare overwhelm is one of the most powerful moves that we can do as a man. to declare like, hey man, I'm fucking in it. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I just remember sending him a message because our call's like 8 o'clock. It was like 10 to 8. I'm like, hey dude, I'm in complete overwhelm right now. I've had a massive night. This shit's going everywhere. I'm not in my body. I've got to get the kids to kindy. And he's like, dude, I'm here. Whenever you need to jump on, jump on. And I was in that survival mode, but he gave me the permission to ask for time. Like I was that freaking out. I didn't even ask. Like I was trying to people please. And this is only 6 weeks ago, just trying to show up. And I got on that call with him and he's like, what's up, man? And I told him. And then he's like, how did that feel, bro? I just broke down and just cried my eyes out. Man, it's the most scariest thing I've ever had to fucking deal with in my whole life. It was the most petrifying and terrifying thing. And just cried and cried and cried with him on the screen. Then I'm like, thank you so much, man. And now I can go talk to Melinda. And he's like, awesome, man. So I literally went out and I was like, hey, baby, you okay? And then she came and we cried together. But I was able to hold her and my bro held me. I didn't need my partner to hold me. And so transparently, I still had tears to her. I'm like, but that was so scary, babe. And I was able to share transparently and vulnerable, I'd say transparently, my emotions, but it wasn't dumping on that. So the way that I describe this is to share our emotions, don't lead with them as men. So we share our emotions with our partner, but don't lead with them. Because if we're leading with them, it's like we need someone to hold us. And so this is why I feel men's work is really important. Doesn't mean not to talk to our women, but I think there needs to be a distinction. So yeah, that I got caught in that thing about vulnerability is sexy. And so yeah, I remember getting caught in that trap and learning many lessons.
Yeah, and I would totally, as a woman, agree with that. You know, it's as you said, transparency is super sexy, but not to be vomiting your emotions on your woman. You know, you go away and you heal with other men, you take a walk, whatever you need to do, and come back to your woman grounded. So but I did want to hear that from a man who I know you've integrated the heart and the mind, and this is something I want to get into now, because would you say, like, what does it take for a man to integrate his mind and his heart? When you're living in that space of survival, that mental chaos, that, you know, how are you going to pay the bills? How are you going to get promoted at work? How are you going to, you know, buy a house? All this stuff. Mm-hmm. What does it take for a man to realize the heart plays such a big part in his decisions and him developing as his greatest version?
So there's this beautiful quote, and it says, it's not the load that breaks a man down, it's the way he's carrying it. So that load is the pressure and stress of being a provider, that pressure and stress of being a man, a father, a husband, a partner, not seeing your kids, the rent, all of that pressure. And the way that we've been carrying that up until now as men is on our own, trying to carry the load on our own. And so that's why it's not the load that breaks us down. So it's not the stresses of life, it's the way we've been carrying it on our own. And so on our own is up here. And so then why men's work so prevalent, so important, is when we're able to open up to other men and we get that elephant out of the room, so elephant out of here. When we verbalize that to other men, we realize we're not the only one going through the same stresses and challenges. Other men are able to offer us advice or solutions because they've moved through that or they've moved past that challenge. And then together we get to carry that weight. And so it's like, then we soften. And then through that softening, then we can start looking into coming to the heart space because we've let that load down, because we're trying to hold it all together. It's so stoic. When we're coming from this inhale, it's freaking out. Men are just coming from scarcity. But we just got to realize, hey, it's okay. We come from this place of the exhale. And when we're coming from this place of the exhale, we realize that we do have enough. We do have enough breath. We do have time. We do have enough, all these things. I don't need to know all the solutions, but if I find people that can help me, that is one of the most manly things that we can do, is just put a hand up like, hey man, I don't have this figured out. And so the men that may be listening is like, yeah, but I'm stuck, man. I'm stuck. I don't know how to get there. The thing is, you don't need to know how to get there. All you need to do is know how to take the next step. It's
Okay.
all you need to do. And then the very first steps you need to take is like, yeah, man, I need some fucking help.
Okay, well, let's explore that, because I like to go back to a man's. You've worked with a lot of men, so you've spoken about your journey. Feel free to generalize. So a man's at his deepest, darkest point, and he's put his hand up and he said, I need help. Maybe everyone can't afford a psychologist. That's another question I wanted to ask you. What does the man do there? Where can he get hold of men's circles? What are his options?
Yeah. Jump on Google, jump on Facebook, and literally type in men's circle in my local area. Where is the men's group in my local area? Like, we have technologies at our fingertips right now. If you're here listening to this, I have a free online platform on Facebook called Men's Fuel Station. And so I put content in there every single day just to help men. So you can just come in there and literally come in and fill up. Come in and learn. And like I mentioned, like, we don't know what we don't know. So everything that I'm learning throughout my journey, I'm just like trying to help other people learn that as well. And so what that can do for you is, one, you can start getting some advice to free advice that's going to help you, but it's also going to bring you into a community of men. Within that community, men also share within that. So you can see that you're not going to get ridiculed or put down or attacked or anything like that. So there is a lot of free things out there for men. The one thing that I would invite you to do is do your research too. And so whoever's running that, jump on their personal page, check them out. Like, actually don't be naive. And these people that call themselves leaders or running men's circles, research them, see if they are who they say they are, see if they feel good to you, and then make an informed decision from that. Yeah.
Now, that's very interesting. You said, see if they feel good to you, as opposed to if you think they're good.
Yeah.
Run us through the difference as a man.
Yeah. So we have 3 energy centers. And so we have our head, heart, and gut. And so a lot of men we've been taught not to trust their intuition, that we've got to think things out, whereas we're logical beings and we love problem solvers. And so, yeah, we love to think. But then when we think, we're too logical. And then sometimes if we're too emotional, we're reacting to our emotions. So we want to have that sweet spot of making the decision. And this is literally what this tattoo means here.
Right.
And so it's coming down from the head and from the heart and coming from this sweet spot, having that like an informed decision. So it's not too logical, it's not too emotional based, but it's coming from both. And when it comes from both, it has a feeling. So if it feels good, and then also if you know your values, you can run it through your alignment check within your values, then make decisions from that place.
Okay. As a woman, I mean, I feel I deal a lot with this sort of stuff, but obviously I can only experience it through predominantly the feminine. Now, what I experience is the heart expansion or the heart closure. I mean, how often do we, fold our arms, or we open up? So that's my internal barometer. Is that what the masculine, or you as a masculine, experiences?
Yeah. I call that's the armor. So that's armor, having a drink. And so if you want to challenge yourself, go to a pub and don't have a drink. Go to a pub and not have this in front of you, and be with what happens within your body.
My dog.
That's
Sorry.
okay. Yeah. He's agreeing with me. And so another armor is this, putting our hands in our pocket.
Yeah.
We have these things that are literally, what we're doing is shutting off our heart. We're putting these protection mechanisms within front of us. And so it's then, there's another saying that, and this is what I live by, is making the uncomfortable comfortable. And so, like, standing at a pub, I remember the first time I went sober was I went out to test it.
One moment. Sorry, guys, I had to pause the video and let my dog out, but please continue, Blase.
So we're talking about the first time I went sober, and so I went to the pub, and usually I'd have a drink there, and this drink was this safeguard that I felt safe behind. But then this time I didn't have a drink, and I was just like, it was one of the very first times I was present with my body and present with what feelings I was feeling within my body. And what I was feeling was super fucking awkward. I just remember how vulnerable I felt, how raw I felt. But then what I was also noticing is like the how much the mind was creating stories. Because I remember like I was saying to my mates, like, do I look nervous? And like, they're like, nah, man, you look sweet. And I'm like, oh man, I'm thinking everyone can see me, but like that it wasn't real.
Yeah.
And so yeah, just realizing that I'm not my thoughts. And that was a really powerful thing that the mind's the greatest storyteller in the world. And sometimes those stories aren't true.
On that topic, do you drink now?
Occasionally, I'm actually doing another. I did finished a year sober, and then this year I started to drink again. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do some more time off it again. So, alcohol is one of those things that it has me, and so I need to have parameters and boundaries in place. But yeah, being in a men's team, we've got a men's program goes 3 months. I'm like, oh, cool, I'm gonna do sober for 3 months,
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
just have that accountability. So at the moment, no.
But there's a lot of men who drink
Mm-hmm.
and women, but we're talking about men. How important is it for them to address their drinking and venture into sobriety? What
So not
how
as
yeah.
not, I wouldn't even just use drinking now. I'd say any vice. So a vice is something that you need to numb or avoid your emotions. So in Australia, I know that alcohol or beer, we use it as for men as a reward. You've done a hard day's work, so you deserve a beer. You deserve it. It's a reward. Look at all the ads that go out with VB and Forex. It's like look at the conditioning that we're being placed upon as a country right now. And so I always talk about where I come from, and then a construction background. We work so hard as men, like physically hard for long hours a day that we are super exhausted. So that what we do is to combat the tiredness, and then the partner and having to do the chores when we get home and the kids have a couple of beers just to numb the receptors so we don't have to feel that to then show up. What we're doing is we're giving our power away as a man. Now, a lot of the time, these men have never done anything for themselves. So they've gotten up early, they've gone to work, they're providing, they're going straight home, and the first thing they do for themselves is crack a beer, but then they've got to go show up. So I've got a little hack to give you guys. And this is also, I know that's my background, but I work with men in IT and corporate and all that kind of stuff. And just whether we work physically hard or mentally hard, it's exhausting, and a lot of men doing massive hours. So there's this little hack is that when you finish work, take 15 minutes to do something for yourself. So if you're a tradie or you're in IT, whatever clothes you wear is like a uniform, take that off. Physically take it off. Put something comfortable on and take your shoes off and go to nature. Go to Mother Earth. And find somewhere, wherever you are, you can, even in the middle of a city, there's a park with trees, and just sit and just be still for 15 minutes. If you break the day into 15-minute intervals, there's 96 pockets of time. So talking about pockets of time, just take one pocket of time for yourself. And maybe the first pocket of time you actually take in for yourself, and it's going to be 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But then just sit there, no phone, no journal, no pen, just sit, decompress with no shoes until you're grounding back in. What you're doing is you're taking yourself out of this warrior energy, which is go, 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 do, create, provide, and you're just coming back to lover energy, connection, Mother Earth, nature, sustainable life. So you're going to get grounded and then go back home and then see what happens. And so I challenge you to do this for 2 weeks straight before you tell me it doesn't work. Just try it for 2 weeks and then throw it back at me like, hey, man, didn't work. But for every man I've ever taught this to, and even my partner, she knows, hey, have you done your grounding? She knows if I haven't done it, because the energy that I'm bringing, I'm trying to be very masculine, solution-based. I'm not just this loving dude that's really relaxed and playful. So she can pick up on it. But this is this thing about choosing yourself. So if you're doing that and decompressing that way, is there a need for a beer that afternoon?
Right.
Is there a need to go numb out and go straight to the pub? Because you actually, rather than going to the pub to numb out, you're just allowing yourself to decompress, settle the nervous system. And then when you're back in your body and you're not up in here, you've actually done something for you. When you've done something for you, what we call this is like we're filling up our own cup. Most men are like this. They feel like they're running on empty, but we want to fill ourselves up with love so we can give love. Alcohol is not love. It's dulling the receptors of love. And so if we're able to fill our own cup up as you decompress, like literally just sitting there watching the sunset, putting your feet in the dirt, on the grass, on the ocean, in the sand, just doing something for you for 15 minutes, it will change your whole perception. Like it's such a little thing. And a lot of men get caught up in the guilt too. So fatherhood guilt. I finished work, I've got to go help. I've got to go home. I've got to help my partner with the kids.
Yeah.
And those men, bro, there's been times on your way home, there's been traffic jams and your partner was okay.
Yeah.
Don't box her. She's amazing. She's got this. And so you don't have to rush home. This is this people pleaser trait that we've been brought up with in this generation of men, that we've got to go do that for our partners. No, man, you look after yourself. Otherwise, you're going to get addicted to all of these type of things. And so, yeah, if we can't go without something for 30 days, it means we're addicted to it. Right. And so this is now putting the men that are watching porn, thinking if you're watching porn once a week, you're not addicted. Dude, you're addicted. If you're having alcohol more than once, if you're having alcohol more than twice in a month, you're addicted to it. Same as coffee. So there's so many things that we are addicted to. But then, like, this is the game of like, can I play a game with myself? But that thing doesn't have me. This is one of the biggest addictions we have. If you guys haven't seen The Social Experiment, watch that. I watched that and turned my phone off for 72 hours just to decompress from it. And so I have this thing that every 6 weeks, I turn my phone off for 72 hours. And the only people I get in contact with are the people that I physically contact and in touch with. The first time I turned my phone off, that after the Social Experiment, turn my phone off, the first hour, and I put it inside of our other house, put it in the shed in the office. We're at the back. I got up 12 times in the first hour to go check my phone.
Wow.
12 times. That's how addicted I was to go get an endorphin hit of this thing. Oh, there's validation. So yeah, and so I just want to challenge. I'll put a challenge here because for me as a man, I love challenges, and I think that challenges are very healthy as men. Competition is very amazing when it's done in a healthy manner. That like challenge yourself, man. If you're listening to me right now and like challenge yourself to go 30 days off the booze and do 30 days of doing this instead, and then come back and have a debate with me if you don't feel better or if you do feel better. But like challenge yourself, like actually put yourself into a scenario where you get to grow. Like we're responsible for our own actions, thoughts, speeches, and emotions. And so like what got you here will not get you there. If you want change, if you want to grow, if you want to leave the situation scenario that you're in, you need to do something different.
Right. Now you brought up pornography. Mm-hmm. What have you got to say to men about pornography?
I don't have another hour and a half. Like it's right. It's
well, can you summarize it? And
yeah, very
we've got another 10-15 minutes to wrap up.
Yeah, so with pornography, follow a lady called Catherine Lyle. She's a porn addiction specialist. She's got integrated men's health Lisbon and Melbourne. She's the very first person I ring every single time I have a men's group program online. She's the very first guest speaker. She comes on and runs master classes. And the reason it's so prolific, and I started getting her in like 4 or 5 years ago. So that first master class, I was like, holy fuck. I didn't realize how deep this was. So pornography is the exact same chemical concoction of crack cocaine. And so what we're doing is like literally like poisoning our brain like crack by watching pornography. And don't think that it's there's like 90, I think it's 96, 97% of men on the planet have watched pornography. It's like crazy how much is being put in there. So all the research Kath is doing and asking us one thing, like what's the early stage you've seen porn? It's getting lower and lower and lower. Like kids at 5 and 6 and 7 year old boys are seeing pornography. and there's TNA everywhere where we look, man. So just know that it's like pornography is like a fantasy, and it's like what we deeply desire is connection with our partner, whether it's male or female, depending on sexual orientation. And what you're seeing in pornography isn't real life. It's all these fantasy things and everything. So it has so much, like, there's so many things about intimacy, erectile dysfunction, just the connection between partners, man, we're jacking off to porn in the dark when our partners don't know about it. So you're going to have resentment on yourself, and you're living in the shadows. It's super dark and heavy. And so it is the catalyst for so many other addictions. And so, yeah, cutting it out of my life was one of it was super challenging at the start, because it was just, and this is going to pun intended, like it went hand in hand. I literally just like went hand in hand with me as a man in life. And anytime I felt bored or stressed, I just go rub one out and quickly watch porn. It's so accessible. But then it was wondering why that my relationships weren't as where I wanted to be, or the depth wasn't there, and this sovereignty within myself, because I wasn't owning all of it. I didn't tell my partner about it. I was doing it in the dark when no one was watching, or everyone left their house. Like, it wasn't something that was out in the open. So if it's got to be done in secretively, what is that doing for your psyche or your energetic real estate? So yeah, the next thing then is like they bring that conversation about having open discussions with your partner, and talking about what you desire and your fantasies and that kind of stuff, which opens up so much like amazingness in relationships. So yeah, but it's nasty stuff, man. And so it's literally like, if I was to get rid of anything and offer any advice, cut porn out before alcohol.
Right, interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to know, as a woman, did your relationships with women change once you cut pornography out?
So I literally only cut it out since I've met my fiance. So it's only been that recent. But the level of intimacy and security and safety within our relationship and our sexual energy has been incredible. The thing too, man, is like, when we watch porn, we're continually looking at tits and ass all the time and on the screen. And so then when we go in the real world, that's all we're seeing. So we're seeing women as objects. And so what we do is, man, we're leaking our energy. So we're leaking it. You see a chick walking past, oh, I'm going to look that way. I'm going to look that way. So we're just putting our energy out, and we're leaking all of our chi and our energy out. So sexual energy is creative energy. So if we can harness that energy and keep our sexual energy within there, we can get so much more drive and passion, and we can channel that into purpose and our children and our the gym and our sport and our hobbies. I remember that when I gave up porn, I remember went to the shopping center, and I'm like, oh, this is going to test me, because there's all these young women around, and I have my fiance with me. And so I'm like, cool, just be with the breath. And I've learned about some stuff we can do with energy. So I was with my breath. So I could see women, but then I was just able to breathe. And that urge for me to go look at her tits or look at her ass, I was able to control that. And I've literally got a jumper. It says, be bigger than your dick. So I was like breathing the energy back up. Don't look. Cool. Now we walked for like half an hour. I was continually doing this game I was doing with myself. And every couple of steps, my partner's getting closer and closer and closer and closer. By the time we got into this tea store, she was pretty much like all over me. I'm like, this is crazy. And so energetically, she was picking up on my energy. I didn't tell her what I was doing. She didn't know what I was doing, but energetically she did. And so literally, if we're able to harness that sexuality, it's very magnetizing, and it's very trusting for our partner, and women can feel safe with that. So it's helped our relationship amazingly. And then it's also helped me. There was like, we had kids back to back to back. So we've got a 4, 2 and a 1-year-old. And I remember with Breathy, our oldest boy, we didn't have sex. We weren't able to have sex for like 10 months. So literally intercourse got taken off the table. And so it was the intimacy were like, if I was still watching porn, the intimacy that we're getting through holding hands and conversation and massages and just that kind of connection would not have been there, because I would have been trying to get it in this other place, which is through this porn. I was able to just actually be and just know that it was okay, and be with all of that desires and everything. And the other thing that I just want to offer too, and this is going to be maybe a challenging discussion for the men, is then once you get rid of porn, then it's now about self-discovery of yourself. And so how do you like to masturbate to yourself? So we call this conscious masturbation. Because with watching porn, short, sharp, quick, oh fuck, I'll get it done so no one's watching and before the missus get home. And so that's how your sex life is going to be continually playing out. Short, sharp, fast, but your partner wants you to last longer, because that's how you jack off. And so cut out porn, and then can you consciously pleasure yourself? Like, how do you want to be touched? Yourself. And so then you're able to then really get in tune with your body, then you're able to express that to your partner, and then see what happens to your sex life. See how your game gets longer. Now, what happens is that then men can start feeling awkward because they've never done this before. So they've always had a stimulation, which is porn. Then we can't get it up. But fuck, what's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you, man. You can recreate that. You've got to learn how to be with your body. So Kath Lyle, she's amazing, does all of this kind of stuff, and she's got a lot of free content out there, a lot of ebooks. She's just written like a bestseller around the world book. Amazing with all this kind of stuff. And so yeah, it's been one of the biggest eye openers for me stepping into men's work and men's spaces where we're openly talking about all of this kind of stuff. So yeah.
Wow. Blase, we're going to have to wrap up soon. It's been mind-blowing. I'm just wondering now, if you could let people know where they can get in touch with you and your material, and also would you be willing to put those links that you spoke about maybe in the comment under the YouTube when we put it out on YouTube, so people can have access to those resources?
Yeah, so everyone can find me blazegrinner.com. So this is my name. And so what we've done now is we've made a membership program. So like a weekly membership for men rather than having like thousands of dollars for the things. So there's weekly membership so we can have more men, have men's work more accessible to men. So we have that available. We run 3-day retreats. We do one-on-one coaching if you don't like the group space. So yeah, we do that. And then I always say to anyone, just hit me up on Facebook. Like literally, I answer everyone. So like, if you have any questions, just shoot me on my personal page or my business page. Just shoot me a message, man, and I'll get back to you. Like personally, we'll always get back to everyone, because yeah, man, we don't know what we don't know. And I remember what it was like in that journey of like trying to find men's work and places and people, and I just didn't know where to look. And because of the work I do in the contacts that I've made, I pretty much know a lot of people in most areas that are running things at men's work or spaces or circles or workshops, or yes, there'll be something for you. And if I can't help you, I'll know someone in that area could help you. So yeah, just don't be a stranger, man. And the biggest thing is like, there's no longer that men need to suffer in silence. We don't need to anymore. So this is one man you can always turn to. So just hit me up, shoot me a message, and yeah, I'll point you in the right direction.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, because there's a lot of men suffering out there on the brink of suicide that have just got no idea who to reach out to, where to go, what the next step is. And as you said, you know, it's just one step at a time that gets you eventually to where you want to go. Because you wrote yesterday in that post your 5 reasons for existing. Do you want to quickly go over those?
Yeah, so it was interesting. So I was like, oh, what do I want to create? Like, what do I want to give as to help people today? And then there's a photo of my family, and it's very not often that we get a photo of all 5 of us with 3 young kids, and so we're getting a little chin. So it's the 5 of us, and I look down, I'm like, oh, there's 5 of us. They're my 5 reasons to exist. And then I started thinking into like, okay, cool. Well, there's myself. That's number 1, and so my number 1 is myself. Number 2 is my partner. Number 3 is my children. But then the other 2 was the purpose that I have on this planet. And so it is literally to activate a generation of men. Like that's one of my reasons to exist. And the other reason to exist is then to like, it's like to live my legacy, which is then the legacy aspect of it is then create spaces for our emerging elders and these younger, like my boys and your children, to have a better lifestyle, to have role models to like, hey, this is how you be a man. So yeah, like they're my reasons to exist. So it's I heard this the other day about surrounding yourself with people, and how do they talk about time? Are they just talking about day to day to day and just trying to get to the weekend? And that's who used to hang around. But it's really beautiful, especially after that post. I'm like, oh man, the people I'm surrounding myself with, we're now talking about legacy. We're talking about we're not talking about just our lifetime now. So we've got another 67 years on this planet. We're talking about past that. And it's like, we're not even going to be here anymore. We're talking about that, which is really cool. And so don't think that if you're a man, if you jump on my personal page, I just put a post up about being surrounded by turkeys. It's hard to soar like an eagle if you're surrounded by turkeys. And just know that if you're a man that knows you're an eagle, but then the people around you in your life are just stuck and they're just staying where they are, that there is a tribe for you, there is a place for you, there is people that are as crazy as you and as ambitious as you, that want to grow and elevate, and that it's okay, that it is okay, that it is normal, and it's okay to let go of people. It was like, to let go of my childhood friends was one of the most loneliest journeys I've ever had to go through, because we were so tight for so long. And I let go of them 7 years ago. And then there was a very lonely journey. But then one of my spiritual mentors told me that as you grow or rise in awareness, prepare to get lonely, because the conversations that you're having with the people that you are surrounded with won't nourish you anymore. So talking about the footy and how good you used to be able to fight and work aren't going to nourish you anymore, because you want to be talking about vision and family and where you're going and legacy and that kind of stuff. And so just through that process, it's like elevation requires separation. So as you elevate, you let go of some stuff, which could be some close friends, have been childhood friends. But when you let that go, it creates the space to call in those new things, which is okay. So yeah, that was that big thing. I thought that I created this story that it was wrong with me to let go of all of those mates, to step away from all of those mates, but it was the most rewarding thing that I could have ever done. So just know that it's okay.
And one final question that I've got to ask, how do you balance yourself, your partner, 3 young children, your mission? How do you balance it all and make everyone happy?
I don't make everyone happy. That's the first thing.
Okay, good,
and so like I just
and you
do the
don't
best
have
I can.
to. Is that important?
So for me is I removed the word balance and changed the word to harmony, and this is what really helped me. And so like everything you just mentioned, so there's like 7 or 8 things that you mentioned, and so if I'm trying to balance all of those 7 things like that, and I've got like 8 of those seesaws going to try and balance that, I'm going to be consistently overwhelmed and people pleasing, good for everyone. But if I'm in harmony, which is life, it's not rigid, that life is going to be ebbs and flows. I could be having a disagreement with my partner and be in it emotionally there, but then knowing that that's just in an ebb, it's going to change, it's going to come back up, that I could be here on the podcast and be amazing, that I'm going to be there and just go with life and just be in harmony with life. So that's one. Number 2, I'm very good with my time management and I live by my values. So I only say yes to stuff that's in alignment with me. I'm very clear on what my vision, my mission is, and the priority orders that they are, and that pockets of time. There's 96 pockets of time in a day. And so then when Paul McCormack, that very first psychologist, he taught it for me, I've repackaged it for men's work. He's like, how many of those pockets of time are you wasting up here? Jealous, worrying about your partner. It's just like, holy shit, man, like 5 hours a day. And he's like, those pockets of time are finite. And I said, oh man, that was this big light bulb moment. So I started structuring my day. And so for me, I have a lot of structure. And so structure is very masculine. So I do this and this and this and this, but then I flow between it all, the feminine. I'm ensure every Thursday I've created time and space within our lifestyle. It's going to be different for you because you have different timetables, but I have 3 hours every Thursday that my partner and I have a date day every week. And it's a non-negotiable. Like it's non-negotiable. Nothing can get booked in on that ever. There's like just certain things, and one of the biggest lessons I learned is that at any time our relationship gets clunky, I revisit all of this, all of my timetable, because it means that she's not getting nourished. I'm not getting nourished. I need some more time for myself. And I'll go through like life. It's like life is seasonal too. It's like and so are we. And so sometimes I prefer to surf in the morning, sometimes it's in the afternoon. So just looking at where I can do that. At the moment, I slipped a disc in my back in March. I love training in the gym, but I've had to like go, okay, cool. I need to put the gym down and rehab for a moment. Okay, so I've got a little bit more time at the moment because I usually that's an hour a day that I used to train in the gym. What am I going to do with that hour? I'm going to put it into the business. Now the back is starting to get better. That's coming up. And so now, like it was just last night, okay, in between 4:30 and 5:30, I'm going to go back in the gym. We're lucky with a gym here. And so because family is really important to me, I'm like, cool, that's a time I'm usually chilling with the boys. So the boys are going to come in and train with me. So I'm adaptable. So I'm bringing them into my routine. And so, yeah, it's just I'm never finite with anything. Always just like morning routines, everything changing. But yeah, that harmony and being structured with my time, knowing my vision, knowing my values, that's how I've been able to navigate everything.
Amazing. Love it. Love it. You've
And
given me so much insight into the masculine. And as a woman, I'm so grateful for that. And I know that many men also will have gained a lot from your wisdom and knowledge and insight experience.
Can I just share one thing before we go?
Of
So we
course.
had a retreat 2 weeks ago. And so the part of the retreat is on a ceremony. So all the women and the wives and the partners and the family and the friends and the kids come out and we do it on a ceremony. And part of the thing that I said to the women is like, ladies, just know that you don't have to hold your men anymore. And it got very emotional because I could feel, and I started crying, and every woman there, they all started crying. And we turned around and I said, because these men now have brothers for life, that they have a Facebook group, they have an army of men to lean on. And so I just share that is that it was a direct reflection of where the world's at the moment, that women have been holding so much for their men that they love so dearly. And now it's time for us men to fucking hold each other so women can be women. And so, yeah, man, I just want to put that prayer out to you, man, that I just know that you didn't know what you didn't know. And that that sometimes we just used our partners and have been holding so much for us. And it's not their role to hold us, that we as men get to hold each other. And there is places that you can come to with safety and sovereignty and brotherhood and this yearning that you desire to be seen and belong without judgment. It exists. Now, I didn't know because I played football. I had this camaraderie. I had these mates that were like amazing, but they were cheating on their wives, all that kind of stuff. And like we would like lie for each other, but that's not who I wanted to be. And like I'm like when I didn't know how I didn't know what it was until I actually experienced it. And most men, like 80, 90% of men say this about men's work. I don't know what that thing is that I want, but when I find it, it's this brotherhood. This is what I've always wanted. It's a place of acceptance, to be seen, to know that you belong without judgment, to be pushed and challenged and everything. And it's men's work is brotherhood. Now, it's not saying that we don't do stuff with women as well. We do it for the sake of. So we're working on ourselves for the sake of our women and our children. And there's times too, a lot of the stuff that we teach is like, now you go do that with your partner. So you've done it for yourself as an individual first. Now go do that with your partner. Go teach your kids that. And so bringing it all back into the home front. So it's not just a man only thing. It's like we do it for the sake of. So yeah, man, I just remember like 11 years ago, I didn't know what it was I wanted until I found it, which was that brotherhood and that sense of belonging. And I could just be me. I could stop pretending with all these masks and these walls and bravado. I could just be Blase, man. It was just so relaxing because it's so exhausting trying to be someone you're not, man.
Yes. Wow. Now, is there anything I haven't asked that you feel is imperative to say to men? Please go for it.
It's all on you, man. Like the thing is, no one's going to come to save you, bro. There's no one coming to save you. And it's like, you need to take that step. So it's like, you need to take that step. And sometimes that step is an inward step to actually go, hey, man, I don't want to be here anymore. And so it's like that ownership. No one can make you take that decision. Only you can, but you have the power to do that. And once you take that ownership, that's where life changes. literally changes because you're not pointing out that way. You're pointing back this way. I mean, you take ownership of yourself and your life. Whether it doesn't mean not having support. When you take ownership, that's when your life changes like so much, man. So much. And you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it alone.
Amazing, Blase. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm sure we'll be having you on again soon.
Love to. Thank you so much, Jim.
All right, so I'll stop the recording.